You probably have a meeting in an hour, maybe two. There is a screen to check, a message to answer, a task that was due yesterday, and a low-grade hum of anxiety that follows you from room to room. But here is the question nobody asks. What were humans actually doing for the 300,000 years before any of this existed? The answer is far stranger than you think. Start with time. You have been told that ancient life was brutal and exhausting. Constant labor, constant danger, constant survival. That picture is almost entirely wrong. Anthropologist Marshall Salins spent decades studying hunter-gatherer societies and called them the original affluent society, not because they had wealth, but because they had something rarer. They had time. Studies suggest the average person spent between 3 and 5 hours per day on subsistence activities. The rest of the day was theirs. So what did they do with those hours? A lot of it was rest. Real rest. Not the collapsed in front of a screen kind. Anthropologist Jerome Lewis, who lived with the Bayaka people of Central Africa, described their resting as almost meditative. They would lie in their shelters, listen, do nothing at particular speed, and feel no guilt about it. The concept of wasted time did not exist. Your ancestors also talked, constantly. Evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar found that roughly 65% of human conversation across all cultures has always been about social information. Who did what? Who is with whom? What happened between those two people at the edge of camp? You would call it gossip. Dunbar calls it social grooming, and it held the group together. Outside the group, there was almost no survival. They played. They made music. The oldest known flute dates to 43,000 years ago. Your ancestors were making music before farming, before cities, before almost everything we associate with civilization. There was art. Cave paintings at Lascaux include small handprints pressed against stone by children who climbed into the dark and blew red ochre around their palms. Not for survival, for something that looked remarkably like the impulse to say, "I was here." They also cared for each other. Archaeological evidence of healed bones tells us that someone fed the injured. Someone stayed. Ancient life was not every man for himself. It was almost the opposite. At night, they gathered around fire. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied Kalahari communities and found that daytime talk was practical, but nighttime talk shifted almost entirely into stories. Myths. Accounts of distant places. Tales of ancestors. Wiesner argues that firelight storytelling may be where the human imagination was born, built night by night, flame by flame, across hundreds of thousands of years. Then, about 12,000 years ago, everything changed. The agricultural revolution began. Humans stopped moving and started staying. The workday stretched. Hierarchy arrived. Time stopped being a texture and became a resource, and the resource was always running out. Anthropologist James Scott found that the first written records of agriculture are also the first written records of debt and taxation. The clock did not come first. The ledger did. Your body remembers a different arrangement. The anxiety that follows you from room to room, the low hum that never quite stops, the suspicion that you are always slightly behind, always failing at the management of your own hours, that is not a personal flaw. That is a biological creature trying to live inside a system it was never designed for. The next time you find yourself staring out a window, not doing anything in particular, and you feel the guilt crawl in, the voice that says you should be productive, try to remember what you actually are. You are the descendant of people who spent their afternoons talking and resting and pressing their hands against cave walls and watching the fire think. You were not built to be busy. You were built to be here.